Hey guys, Pat from Team FYB here. Here to show you my branded deck profile for June 2023. Just went X1 first place with this deck at locals, so let's get right to it. Started off with every branded list, of course. Free Fall on Valbaz. I think free is always correct. You more often than not will go all into all free Fall on Valbaz, especially in a grind game. And the third one does come up, lets you overextend a little bit if you need to burn for a time using Branded Fusion. Next up, of course, the starter of the deck, Free Aluber, nothing more, nothing less. Obviously, Search is the best card in your deck. Nothing to explain there. For, of course, the only two of, we have Cartesia. Cartesia, obviously, I think 2 is correct as well, simply because there are just moments where you will send Cartesia, and you'll send Cartesia off of the effect of Quem, and then you'll need the second one for Branded Fusion. So having 2 is correct. It's also good for Fusion deployment plays, and it does come up where you just need the second one if the first one gets banished, especially if people are playing Bastilles at your locals. Moving on, of course, we talk about Quem. 1's correct, I think. Quem will always be a one of. And obviously Quem escalates the ceiling of Branded quite well. Lets you loop your Mirror Jades, lets you summon Cartesia on your opponent's turn. And it even works off some weird plays. At this locals specifically, I resolved this against someone activating Pot of Prosperity. So again, really good card. I think 1 is fine. You can always just search it off of Branded Opening or anything like that. Some one-offs, of course, we got the Tragedy and the Springans kit. Springans kit, just an extra copy. I do run the kit just because I do run Sprind in the extra deck, so it's just a target to summon. And, 4th Aluber does come up. Of course, Tragedy here, we do run the one-of. It is a brick now because we don't typically run Allure of Darkness anymore. But we do run the Foolish and the Sark, so having 1 is perfectly fine. We do run 2 Courier here. 1 is obviously usually searched off of Branded Loss as a negate, as an interaction, but at the same time, having the second one means if you gold Sark early for the Tri-Brigade Mercurier, you still at least have the opportunity to search the other one. And also, with 2, I afford to run Brigand in the extra deck, so I can always have 1 for 1 turn, search this card at the end phase with Brigand's great effect. Moving on, of course, we do run the Bastille package. We do run 1 Lubellion, 1 Saronir. I do believe it's fine, right? There are just corner case scenarios where you need the Retribution play with Cartesia and Saronir. And Lubellion's still great if you want that Branded Loss. And of course, some extra one-ofs. We've got the Albion, pairs well with the Saronir to dump the Retribution, of course. And of course, the Ad Libitum. Now, comments on the Ad Libitum here. We could cut this, and if you are interested in playing Branded the more optimal way, you can replace this with the Gimmick Puppet Nightmare. You just sub it in. But personally, it's personal preference whether or not you want to play Gimmick Puppet Nightmare. There's a video from Galzo, big Branded guy on YouTube, who talks about it. It's personal preference. Personally, Despia Ad Libitum is fine if you want to do explosive Mirror Jade plays, but you can just sub this out for Puppet if you wish. And then, of course, we just run 2 Jizukirus here. I think Kaijus are pretty good. I'm not a personal fan of hand traps in Branded, so we just run Board Breakers. So Jizukira is good. The reason why I choose Jizukira over other ones is because A, it's a light, so you can make Albion off of this. B, it's got 3300 attack, so we can give this to Kashira, and they often have trouble outing this card by battle. It's just a really big guy. And 2, since it's got a high stats, we can even use it for Brigand in our extra. So this is just good, and I personally think it's just reliable over stuff like Kurakara, per se. Moving on to spells. I don't need to explain that one. We got free Branded Opening. Of course, Branded Opening becomes a lot better at 3. We used to play this at 2 before, but now it's a free of just because of Quem. Since Aluber isn't our only Despia card to summon off of this, Quem, Branded Opening is an instant free of. Of course, we do run 2 deployment. I was on free for the longest time. but I feel like it was kind of unnecessary to see multiple copies of this card. And since Cartesia is usually in rotation off of Quem, you don't necessarily need Cartesia on the board immediately. So I think 2 is fine. Of course, we run the 1 Lost, the 1 branded in red. Lost is obvious. You usually set this off of Rebellion. And it also helps you build negate boards. And yeah, your opponent can't respond. That's a free win for Branded. And we do run Branded in red. It's a lot more powerful in this version of the build because you do have the Ad Libitum and you do have the Mirror Jade. So having this is fine. Setting it is great. And yeah. Of course, Foolish and Sark for your Tragedies and your Mercuriers. Foolish Barrel becomes a lot more powerful in the Gimmick Puppet build should you play that. So you can at least Foolish the Gimmick Puppet if you're missing it for your combo. And finally, the package I decided to play today was Thrusts. I do like Triple Tactics Thrust. In a meta where people are really hating on Branded, playing Ash Blossoms and all that, this becomes really powerful. I chose to pair it today with Fusion Duplication. If they Ash the Branded Fusion, you Thrust, set the Duplication, resolve it on your opponent's turn. Duplication also becomes really funny in the mirror match. If they decide to activate Branded Fusion, you can flip this and Branded Fusion on them as well. My only problem with Duplication today, though, it was belled. This card can be belled since it doesn't banish the Branded Fusion as cost. That is one thing to keep in mind when you're playing this. I do believe, though, that this is just... this can be subbed in for any engine you think is necessary. This can be sided in with crossouts. This can be more hand traps. Entirely up to you, but I personally just like resolving Branded Fusion. It's the best way to play Branded. Other targets for the Thrust to latch onto, we have Triple Tactics Talent, Dark Ruler No More, and 3 Evenly Matched. We're playing Board Breakers, so we want to bust our board. I choose to only run multiple of Evenly Matched, because drawing multiples can break boards if they only have one Omni to contest it. Talents and Dark Ruler, needless to explain, are pretty good. If I don't need the Fusion Duplication, or if I'm going second, these are the cards I am generally searching of Thrust. And last but not least, obviously the Retribution. You're generally actually either sending this for Saronir to grab your branded stuff, or you are setting this off of Albion in order to prevent your opponent from bistilling you if you're resolving the Puppet lock. Again, this deck can be subbed in with a Puppet. This card will not change regardless. Moving on to the extra deck, we have, of course, the Granny. I've elected to only play 1, although 2 might be necessary, I feel. Granny is great. Obviously, you're usually sending the Ad-Lib or the Gimmick Puppet if you're playing it for its effect. And its other effect does come up. We do have a couple targets for its summon. Moving on here, of course, we have double Mirror Jade, best card in the deck. Still is the best card in the deck. Your goal is obviously to try and loop as many of these as possible. Generally speaking, you can loop 2 on your opponent's turn, 3 if you want to be a bit extra. Of course, we'd run 2 Albion. Whether you summon it or send it, you're playing this card. And we do run the 1 Rebellion. We're not that afraid of Kashtira anymore. So 1 Rebellion is perfectly fine, since it shuffles itself back most of the time anyway. We do elect to run Sanctifier, regardless if the Puppet is in the deck or not. If you run the Puppet, obviously, you just summon this, and you give your opponent the Puppet, and you sort of win on the spot. But you can use Albion to help extend your Mirror Jade plays. You can use it to summon Mirror Jade on your... you can use it to summon a Mirror Jade that's been spent, or you can use it to summon Fallen of Albaz, so you can fuse with your opponent's monsters. Or you can even use it to summon Cartesia, so that you have additional plays. Sanctifier comes up a lot in the grind game, if you're playing the Puppetless build, but we know why it's in here. Next up, some more Albaz fusions that we usually send off of Mirror Jade. We have Rinbrom, we have Sprind, we have Titaniclad, and of course we have Brigand. These 2 are pretty standard, as you send Rinbrom to use Fallen of Albaz in the grave, and you usually use it to make Sprind. We run Titaniclad and Brigand because we want big bodies. Titanic obviously becomes a huge body if you fuse it, especially if you fuse it with your own Jizukiru. And Brigand is here because since we run multiple Tri-Brigade Mercuriers, it's perfect for grabbing additional copies, and it's just a big monster that you have an extra. If you have the extra materials for, you can just make the Brigand. And Brigand itself is requires a Fallen of Albaz and a level 8 higher fusion, so it just helps cover the bases with what we have as Fallen of Albaz fusion targets. Moving on to Despias, we run the one Coridas and we run the one Proskenian. Coridas is obvious, great for just protecting yourself. Opponents will find it very hard to out this without triggering its second effect. And Proskenian is here because personally I found Lulu Walilith to be kind of underwhelming as a target to summon off of Granganol. So I wanted to chuck in Proskenian as a big power play. And honestly, like, in testing, it's okay. You can run Lulu Walilith in this spot if you find it useful. I just didn't find much use for Lulu, especially since I'm not running a large amount of light spellcasters in the deck, and I'm not running the Deer Servant engine either. So I found Proskenian to be a lot more useful in that corner case scenario. And last but not least, we have our branded in red targets, or just fusion targets in general that aren't branded. Guardian Chimera, Draco Stapelia. Pretty self-explanatory. Last but not least, we have the side deck. Side deck is obviously based on your local, so always prepare for your local when you are building your side deck. But for mine, I was particularly afraid of back row matchups. So we do run Magician and Dragoon in the side. Personally, I just believe that your deck should be as consistent as possible. Drawing the normal summon off of anything is just... drawing the normal monster, off of anything is terrible. So I keep this in the side, and I only put this in if I am certain that I am summoning in a matchup. So Dragoon is like for lab, or for cards or decks that cannot out an untargetable monster. For more back row hate, we do run the free Cosmic Cyclone. Personally, even if you don't hate on back row, you have to hate on Grave of the Super Ancient Organism. That card is insane against Branded. I always side this in going first to respect Blanket Set It Pass, since Branded actually doesn't have a lot of spell trap removal. So I always side this in regardless if it's a back row matchup or not, going first. Moving on, we of course run one Call By and one Branded Banishment for going first. Banishment's good against matchups where you know it's good, so in the mirror, this is amazing. And Call By, I had it in the main for a while. I chose to put it in the side because it's a card that has no impact, and I have Frost, so I'd rather draw the Frost than the Call By at this point. First, we also run free Tikaboo. There could be only one. Branded is unaffected by this trap. It just, you can play under it. And there are just certain decks that lose to this. Decks like Sprite, decks like Ricochet Avalon. It's just a good floodgate. It's the only really floodgate that you can play. The only problem is this card doesn't hurt Vanquish Soul, and that is my one loss today. But other than that, I think Tikaboo is great this format, and it's probably the only thing you can play in Branded for a floodgate. And then some going second cards, we decided to just play more power cards, as like I don't believe in hand traps in Branded. We just play big board breakers. So we play the closest proximity. We have two Nibiru and free Dimension Shifter. You play Dimension Shifter against Branded so that they don't puppet lock you, because they can no longer summon the puppet from the banish pile. But Dimension Shifter also catches the odd matchup, beats Ricochet Avalon, and it beats Ricochet Avalon, beats Mathmech. You have that for that. And of course Nibiru. In a format where your opponent isn't expecting it, Nibiru is really good. In a format where they are expecting it, it's terrible. But I think this can be whatever you want. I just think that in my locals, Nibiru isn't respected enough. That was my Branded deck profile. Went X1 today, but due to tiebreakers, it ended up being first place at our locals today. It was a pretty small local. I think the deck performs really well. My only loss was to Vanquish Soul. I feel like that deck is quite powerful in terms of its resource game. And since it runs a lot of hand traps, we're talking Lash, we're talking Veiler, we're talking Imperm, there are just moments where they draw Ash Imperm, and you have to sort of take it if you don't have the Frost. In that retrospect, you can run stuff like Crossout Designator to sort of soften the blow. But again, it's based on your local, and it's also based on the event that you're going to. Personally, I think Branded can be built in a lot of different ways. There are so many engines out there, so many people playing it in so many weird and wacky ways. You know, I was running the Frost engine today, but you saw people playing the Deer Servant, saw people playing Crossout Designator, some people splashing it with other engines like the Keeper engine. So take my deck list as a sort of guide to sort of what you want to do. One extra suggestion to the pile that is Branded pile. I hope you all guys have a good day. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.